Okay, and this is the one. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Put your thumb up, okay?
Yeah, they all put the thumb up.
Good. All right. So there we go. That's how it goes now. We should be able to go forward now, I think. Yeah, there it goes. In the beginning, this is another book talking about God, the atom, and the universe, how it all fits together. And it's really nice to actually go into this stuff because it's been my hobby now. It's a fresh look at the scientific discoveries to prove the Bible and science do not contradict each other. You know, the interesting thing about it is that many religions want to fight with science. But if you really look at science properly, and I'm talking about real science, I'm not talking about evolution, then there is no real problem there, right? So let's have a look. See, there's no need to take issue, but take issue with serious scientific discoveries. And I'm talking about just things people can actually find out by looking properly, right? And you can put it next to the Bible, and there's no real contradictions if you read it properly. Okay, so the first chapter of this book, God created the universe. So God created the heavens and the earth without form or void, as Genesis 1, verse 1 and 2, right? And on the bottom of the screen it says there, in the beginning, God. And introduces us to an eternal God. God created the heavens and the earth. So interesting to see that. Now, science is preparing a surprise for mankind. At least it will be a surprise for those who have doubts about the Bible and its God. It will come as a surprise for those who are laboring under the misinformation that science has undermined the Bible. That is just not true. Science has not undermined the Bible. There's other stuff going on, also to do with the Bible. Okay? Interesting to see that now. Amazing stuff people learn. So the first verse tells us about God, the concept of God. He made the universe, so every time science extends the limits of the known universe, so when we make more discoveries, when we discover more how things are working, right, how everything is working, then we need to enlarge our picture of God again. So as we discover more things, right, we also discover that God is greater than we think, and it never finishes. At least it should grow as we believe this verse. Like mathematical infinity, our concept of God must keep growing with every step that expands man's knowledge. This first verse tells us that God will always be ahead of our imagination, right? So for me, that is a fantastic way to look at God, is to look at what he made, what he did, how he put things together, right? And the more I can understand that, the more I can believe in greater possibilities on a personal level as well. Okay? So, science is different. Science, when they discover things, they discover quite often that they had things wrong. And they discard the old, and then they get the new. And as time goes by, you get the bigger rubbish bin, with stuff is being discarded, which is actually was believed to be true at the time, but then discovered not to be true. So there we go. We would go to, who would want to go to college to taught science from a 1950 textbook? Now 1950 is not that long ago. I was alive at the time. Science is continually revising its theories and laws to cover the most modern facts available, and textbook must be brought up to date almost yearly. That's interesting, right? Yet, people will still readily accept evolution theory based on 200 years of old understanding of science. That is an amazing thing. That people believe stuff which was supposed to be true 200 years ago, while we discover new things every year. That does not make any sense whatsoever to me. Okay? I can say, all the people said amen, but nobody can say amen anyway, so that's okay. All right? Think about that. Doesn't make any sense at all, of course. So, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The heavens, it's actually plural, it's an S on the end, and it means space. The Hebrew word means space. So in the beginning, God created space first. Okay? Then he created matter. Right? And the earth, matter, that was the earth, matter, was without form and void. It was useless, just some dust floating around in space, whatever it was, and things started to happen. You can sort of look at it, how we created atoms, but maybe not even atoms at the time, maybe just neutrons, protons, and electrons. It had to be put together yet in a particular way. Okay? In the beginning. All right? Space and matter, the earth the matter was useless, was void. Right? Waste and void. And it means a chaotic mass. In Jewish scripture, this phrase is translated as unformed and void. So God started with creating space and matter, and it was just still pretty useless, couldn't do much with it. So, verse 3, and God said, let there be light. And things started to happen. Movement came. The useless matter was shaped to become useful. How? In Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 12, it says, he had made the earth by his power or by his energy, and as he came into being, he established the worlds by his wisdom and stretched out the heavens by discretion. And in Jeremiah 51 verse 15, it says the same thing again. He's made the earth, the matter, by his power, by his energy. So there we go. And there is by his understanding or his discretion. So this useless matter started to move together. Things became ordered at the time. All right? In the Interlinear Bible, this is actually a Bible you can download, and it gives you the literal translation of all the Greek and the Hebrew words. All right? So he created the earth by his vigor. That's the word being used. His vigor. And that is a word, means energy, means enthusiasm, that means effort. Something happened, let there be light. And as we now know, the electromagnetic spectrum was introduced by the useless matter on top of it. Things started to go. And beautiful things came out of that. We're going to have a look at what actually happened. Going to see a little movie in a minute. I hope the sound comes through as well. And it really explains it very, very, very well. I might actually talk through it a bit as well at the time to explain what you're actually seeing. This is actually a movie from NASA, and it's talking about the best of science.
Something surrounds you, bombards you, some of which you can't see, touch, or even feel. Every day, everywhere you go. It is odorless and tasteless, yet you use it and depend on it every hour of every day. Without it, the world you know could not exist. What is it? Electromagnetic radiation. These waves spread across a spectrum from very short gamma rays to X-rays, ultraviolet rays, visible light waves, even longer infrared waves, microwaves, to radio waves, which can measure longer than a mountain range. This spectrum is the foundation of the information age and of our modern world. Your radio, remote control, text message, television, microwave oven, even a doctor's X-ray, all depend on waves within the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic waves, or EM waves, are similar to ocean waves in that both are energy waves. They transmit energy. EM waves are produced by the vibration of charged particles and have electrical and magnetic properties. But unlike ocean waves that require water, EM waves travel through the vacuum of space at the constant speed of light. EM waves have crests and troughs like ocean waves. The distance between crests is the wavelength. While some EM wavelengths are very long and are measured in meters, many are tiny and are measured in billionths of a meter, nanometers. The number of these crests that pass a given point within 1 second is described as the frequency of the wave. One wave, or cycle, per second is called a hertz. Long EM waves, such as radio waves, have the lowest frequency and carry less energy. Adding energy increases the frequency of the wave and makes the wavelength shorter. Gamma rays are the shortest, highest energy waves in the spectrum. So, as you sit watching TV, not only are there visible light waves from the TV striking your eyes, but also radio waves transmitting from a nearby station, and microwaves carrying cell phone calls and text messages, and waves from your neighbor's Wi-Fi, and GPS units in the cars driving by. There is a chaos of waves from all across the spectrum passing through your room right now. With all these waves around you, how can you possibly watch your TV show? Similar to tuning a radio to a specific radio station, our eyes are tuned to a specific region of the EM spectrum and can detect energy with wavelengths from 400 to 700 nanometers, the visible light region of the spectrum. Objects appear to have color because EM waves interact with their molecules. Some wavelengths in the visible spectrum are reflected, and other wavelengths are absorbed. This leaf looks green because EM waves interact with the chlorophyll molecules. Waves between 492 and 577 nanometers in length are reflected, and our eye interprets this as the leaf being green. Our eyes see the leaf as green, but cannot tell us anything about how the leaf reflects ultraviolet, microwave, or infrared waves. To learn more about the world around us, scientists and engineers have devised ways to enable us to see beyond that sliver of the EM spectrum called visible light. Data from multiple wavelengths help scientists study all kinds of amazing phenomena on Earth, from seasonal change to specific habitats. Everything around us emits, reflects, and absorbs EM radiation differently based on its composition. A graph showing these interactions across a region of the EM spectrum is called a spectral signature. Characteristic patterns, like fingerprints within the spectra, allow astronomers to identify an object's chemical composition and to determine such physical properties as temperature and density. NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope observed the presence of water and organic molecules in a galaxy 3.2 billion light-years away. Viewing our sun in multiple wavelengths with the SOHO satellite allows scientists to study and understand sunspots that are associated with solar flares and eruptions harmful to satellites, astronauts, and communications here on Earth. We are constantly learning more about our world and universe by taking advantage of the unique information contained in the different waves across the EM spectrum.
So how is that? Isn't that amazing? Right? There we are. Think of it in an empty room, maybe not. Right? Now this is a little picture here you can see where you see the visible spectrum of the light. So there's only a very tiny bit of this electromagnetic spectrum we can actually see. Right? You probably know that some animals, we're going to see that in a minute, can see more. Right? So we also have another one as well, by the way, which is interesting. Here you see the wavelength with actually solar light, the temperature of light, the human eye, what it can see. Some people can see more than others, right? So this is an amazing thing, what is the electromagnetic spectrum, which is so broad, which makes everything moving, and we can only see a teeny weeny bit of it. Reminds me a little bit of how great our God is and how little our understanding is of our great God. Right? So there you go, the visible spectrum. Now, another thing, by the way, is in the electromagnetic spectrum, you look at the Earth, for example, we all know the Earth is spinning, turning around. That actually acts like a gigantic dynamo, right? Which actually creates a magnetic field around the Earth. Now, amazingly enough, that needs to spin at a particular speed, right? To actually have this, the properties of the magnetic field just right. Now we're going to see in a minute, you're going to see another movie where we can see that this actually is very important, because without all this, there would not be life possible on this planet. Would not be possible, no life possible at all. We're going to see now in the next movie how it actually works.
On Arctic nights, the aurora often flames across the winter sky. What is it, and where does it come from? This is where the tale of the aurora starts. On the sun, a star of average size among billions of other stars in our Milky Way. The sun acts as an enormous power plant. The energy is created deep inside the core of the sun. Here the temperature is over 14 million degrees, and the pressure so enormous that hydrogen atoms are squeezed together into another element, helium. This nuclear reaction releases energy. The light radiates outward from the core of the sun. In the outer layers, the heat moves to the surface in huge eddies called convection cells. These electrical currents of charged gas create magnetic fields inside the sun. In some places, strong magnetic fields push their way up through the surface. They slow down the eddies of hot gas. The surface cools, and darker sunspots appear. The electrically charged gas is called plasma. The plasma drags the magnetic field further outwards. The magnetic field stretches and twists like a rubber band, and then the rubber band breaks. Several billion tons of plasma is hurled out from the sun. This is called a solar storm. The solar storm can reach speeds over 8 million kilometers an hour. After 6 hours, it blows past the planet Mercury. After 12 hours, the planet Venus. After 18 hours, the solar storm reaches Earth. When the solar storm reaches our planet, something strange happens. An invisible shield, the Earth's magnetic field, deflects the storm. The magnetic fields couple together and create a funnel where the gas streams down on the daylight side of the pole. This is the daylight aurora. The magnetic fields stretch further back and couple together. The magnetic rubber band breaks, and gas from the solar storm streams along the magnetic lines towards the poles on the night side. This is the nighttime aurora.
So what we've seen here, if you have seen two planets and the solar storm just blasts these planets and there's no life possible there. But the Earth is turning at the right speed. There's a magnetic field around it, so we can actually live quite happily on this planet. It's protected by electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic spectrum. It's all there. So in the big way and the small way, this electromagnetic spectrum is vital. And God said, let there be light. And with light, he said, the electromagnetic spectrum. There it is. Without it, no life, no nothing. Okay? That's another one, of course. Electricity we got from that. Now these days we find it normal, of course. Switch on the light, and if the light doesn't go on, we said, what's wrong? Right? And we live with all this stuff like there is nothing really special about it. But you know what? It is very, very, very special indeed. Beautiful pictures of what God has done. All right? So, God said, let there be light. I also put there and sound, because sound is also part of the spectrum. The only difference being is that sound cannot travel through space. Right? But there's other ways, of course, as well. Now, God said, let there be light. And you find in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, a number of times, God said, blah, 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 blah. God said, pa, 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 pa. God said, pa, 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 pa. Right? And every time he said something, something happened. He spoke things into being. Right? Now we're going to see now something interesting as well, that sound can actually shape things. So I'm just wondering, maybe speculating a little bit here, how this voice from God, how that sounded like. Whether that was actually the voice itself shaping things. Right? Let's have a look. In physics, sound is vibration that typically propagates as an audible wave of pressure, transmission medium such as gas. So it's not going through space. And we can see also that sound, some of the sound we can hear, we all know of course that dogs can hear sound different, birds can hear sound different, can have a much bigger range, right? Sound waves below 220 Hz are ultrasound or infrasound and ultrasound. So they're again a bit like light. You got things you can hear and things you can't hear, but it's there anyway. Things you can't see, things you can see, but it's there anyway. Really amazing. It's a form of energy, right? So interesting to see. It sort of needs to move through something, through liquid perhaps, through air, right? There's no air, there is no sound transmission. It's called energy as well. We all know, of course, you know that very loud sounds can actually blow things just to bits, right? So we have here is sound and ook EM energy. And if you look at it, that's on the spectrum where sound is. All right. And again, sound is sort of like something we can hear, something birds can hear, dogs can hear, and you see there's a difference there. So again, sound is a lot bigger than we can actually hear, but it's there. So that is a bit of speculation. Can we accept sound as electromagnetic? Yes, maybe we can, maybe we can't, but it sort of fits on the picture anyway. So how did it sound when God said something? God said something. Now we're going to see how actually sound shapes things. Different frequencies, shapes, different patterns. There's an interesting quote here from Nikola Tesla. Sight of the day, think deeply instead of clearly. There's an experiment, you can do it yourself if you like. You need a big speaker and a frequency generator and a lot of iron filings. That's the frequency generator. Connect up the speaker. Put a particular frequency on the plate and you get a particular pattern. Different frequency. There we go. Different sound, different pattern. Yeah. Dat zeg ik hier niet. Dat zeg ik hier niet.
Ja. Goed.
So, I've got a good imagination. I don't think God spoke English or South African or Afrikaans or Dutch. You know, I've got no idea what it sounded like, but I can imagine some sort of combination of sounds shaping things. God said, whatever the noise was, and things started to shape. Amazing, really. Right. the more we understand and appreciate about our God, that's what we started off with, the more things become possible in our life. Healings, miracles, signs and wonders. I find myself, in my own case, if I need something to happen in my life, and I pray about things, and I just start imagining how great my God is, and I just look at things and I said, wow, God, my problem is very small compared to what you can do. All right? It's really a faith building thing for me. All right, a few other things. All this electromagnetic spectrum, how your brain works, your facial muscles work, right? It's really amazing. Without it, there would be nothing. Absolutely zilch, zero. You can make a similar test about the heart. The heart actually has got an enormous amount of electromagnetic stuff going on there. You know, this kicking it off, of course, you got interesting things happening in your heart. Got a presentation of that as well. One of these days I might put that up. All right. So there we go. How did we ever live without all this stuff? Right? And it was all possible. It was became possible when the Lord said, let there be light. Been there for millions of years, right? And only the last, maybe the last 100 years or so, we've discovered what is there, what we can do with it, and how we can use it, and also how we can misuse it. Same with cells. There's another presentation I got on the cells of the body, human body, right? Without this electromagnetic spectrum, all the stuff inside of it would be totally dead. Nothing would work at all. All right. There we go. That's another one, of course, a very active one at this point in time. Viruses work the same way. Without that, if you could just put the switch away and Corona would be gone in no time, but we would be gone too. So, no life possible without the whole of the electromagnetic spectrum. No working cells, no life, no animals, no people, no plants, no trees, no oxygen, no habitable planet, right? No computers, no brains working, right? And you can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Without that, would be no life whatsoever, nothing at all. So, a miracle working God. You won't find him in religion in general. All you find there is just empty stuff. It can be found, the workings, miracles, in the miracle of creation. Personally, of course, it can be found in being born again, which of course means the possibility of transference from the temporal to the eternal. And that's what we're all waiting for, of course, when you're born again. And that's when we really start to understand the greatness of our God. And the formula for this is in the Bible: you must be born again. Born from above, not just from your mommy and daddy, born from God. Receive God's Holy Spirit, receive God's way of looking at things, receive God's way of thinking about things, and that's where you can go on to indeed see the greatness in the end to its fullness. And we're only just scratching the surface at this point in time. That's it. That's me. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I muted you, Pastor Piet. Thanks very much for doing that. That was great. Wow, a lot in that.
Wow.
I'm sure we're all